Well, we're going to be going over some evidence today, some updates that are showing a prior rumor for a Zelda remake now has significantly more credence and is something we should maybe even expect to happen in 2026, possibly for the 40th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda. That's right, something happened that is now giving us like this big sort of belief that maybe a Zelda remake actually is coming this year. We'll talk about that in a moment because we are going to go over a couple of news stories. We have a bevy of Pokemon news we got to go over, and then just a small little update on like the Circana sales data for Switch 2 and all that for January. But setting that all aside, folks, we are on our road to 162,000 subscribers. So if you're enjoying this content and you're just having a good time around here, I would appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel. And we're going to split things up a little bit. We're basically going to have our today's news segment featuring Pokemon and stuff, and obviously that sales data. And then you could just, if you don't want to watch any of that, you could just skip right to the segment about what's going on with the Zelda remake rumor. All right. First off, let's dive in with the big news of the day, the biggest news of the day. Pokemon Presents. They have finally announced that Pokemon Presents is happening 1 week from today. We all knew this was going to happen. They do it every Pokemon Day, but they also announce it ahead of time, and they announce it way ahead of time compared to Nintendo Directs and all that. So Pokemon says here, how about some Pokemon news trainers? Tune in to Pokemon Presents at 6 a.m. Pacific. So that's 8 a.m. Central Time for me on February 27th. And join us in celebrating 30 years of Pokemon. See ya there. And that's interesting, of course. Very, very, very interesting for a number of reasons. And there technically is this leak, I guess, for it. I don't know if I would call it a leak. It's rumors. We're going to just call it rumors. Pori Leaks put it out there. I'm not sure how accurate any of this is. I don't think they're the source on any of it. But I'm only okay just glancing at this, not because I know that this is what's going to happen, but because it's a pretty safe list. It's like things that I think we already expect. So these are currently multiple independent claims that alleged Pokemon Presents information has leaked through private communications online. Information contains clips and pics and graphics, and obviously we don't have that here. We just have the list. And it says, alleged leaked list for that Pokemon Presents is Pokemon Sleep, Pokemon Unite. Obviously we're talking about the Fire Red, Leaf Green ports. Those are already technically out there. You can pre-order those, but them appearing in there because they released that day makes sense. The TCG next set reveal, an XD/Coliseum for Nintendo Switch Online. So update on Pokemon Champions, Pokopia, which comes out in a couple weeks here, and then Pokemon Wind and Waves, probably as like the show closer. That's Generation 10. Again, this isn't like a big shocking list. That's why I don't mind looking at it. Most of this stuff should just be expected, but just throwing that out there. Now, I did note one of those things on that list has already come true, and you can pre-order it right now. We're talking about, obviously, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. Now, they are $20 digitally, and they don't include all the languages. So you look here, this says English only. English only. And if you go up in the search here and you type Fire Red, you're going to see a French version, a Spanish version, an English version. This is obviously in the US. They didn't put all the languages on one version, which I just find that to be interesting. Of course, when these games originally released, they, I believe, only had one language option. So like if it released in France, it'd be French. If it released in Spain, it'd be Spanish. Released in the US, I believe it was English. So I don't know. I find it a little interesting that you have to buy different versions to get different languages. Whatever. Also, they had a mention when this first popped up of Pokemon Home down here, and now that mention of Pokemon Home support is gone. Now, technically, they have said there will be Pokemon Home support for Legend ZA, but it hasn't actually happened yet. It is possible that just like other Pokemon games, Pokemon Home isn't there day one, which again, day one is Friday next week and will be present later. Obviously, there's a lot of debates online about the price point of this. Obviously, we know about like Pokemon Crystal or whatever that was like $10 on the 3DS Virtual Console, and this is obviously twice that. And they don't appear to have made any changes to the game at all. It's just the game running on Switch 2 and Switch. There doesn't seem to be any differences between this and the release version. And when you go down here, you can see, the digital exclusive contains the Sevi Islands, where even more Pokemon await. You can also visit the Pokemon Wireless Club to trade, battle, and chat with other players via local wireless. And they really do mean local wireless. In the FAQ for this game, they are not supporting any online play. So while you can probably eventually, unconfirmed, put some Pokemon in Pokemon Bank, you can't actually play against people online, trade with people online. This is literally like the old games just running on Switch 2 without like any changes. Maybe some up-resing going on because, you know, these screenshots here, you know, look pretty clean compared to what the resolution actually was back in the day. But besides those up-resing, doesn't appear like anything's really going on. And we all know this stuff's done in emulators all the time. So I don't know, guys. That's kind of what's going on with that. You guys can leave your thoughts down below. We have a little bit more Fire Red and Leaf Green news as well, because of course, with these games available to pre-order on the eShop, they've also dropped the soundtracks of them, 64 tracks, an hour and 21 minutes on Nintendo Music. That's available literally right now if you want to go ahead and take a listen. And then the last thing before we get to the Zelda stuff is just this update on sales data from Matt Piscatella. So this is Circana data for the month of January, and you can see that, you know, there was some subscription growth and increase in some spending. And what we really want to look at is you see the game list here. Only one Nintendo game's on the list, Pokemon Legends EA, which dropped from number 6 last month to number 16 this month. No other Nintendo published game on this list, but of course some of these games on this list are on Nintendo Switch 2, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, that is on Nintendo Switch 2, and you can see it took this big leap from 225 all the way up to number 9. You could probably assume that that is due to the Switch 2 version of the game causing such a large leap up, because again, it was at 225 literally last week or last month, and now in the month it launched on Switch 2, it jumped up into the top 10. So that's probably a Switch 2 related bump in sales. And some of these other games are obviously on Switch 2 as well, though we're still waiting for the Elden Ring release date. Now, as we scroll on further, this is where we get to the hardware stuff. So hardware spending increased by 16%, and there was an offset by Switch 2. I was able to offset some year-on-year declines seen across PlayStation 5, which is down 17% year-on-year, Xbox Series down 27%, and Switch with the massive 79% drop, which isn't a surprise. The price has gone up on it, and obviously there's a Switch 2 out, so why don't you just get the Switch 2 if you're looking to buy a Switch? It plays all the Switch 1 games. Now, despite the sales falling compared to a year ago, PlayStation 5 led the hardware market in both unit and dollar sales in January. Switch 2 ranked second across both measures. And so that's kind of all we really gleaned from all of this. Call of Duty's Black Ops 7 repeated as the best-selling game of the month. You see other people like, oh, Switch 2 is falling off, all of this stuff. Obviously, this is all just opinions. You can see kind of what the ranking is. It went PS5, Switch 2, Xbox Series, PC, Portable, next, and then Nintendo Switch. So basically, people really aren't buying Switch anymore, at least here in the United States, at least in the month of January. I expect sales to be a little bit higher for Switch 2 due to Mario Tennis in this month of February, but it's also one of those things where I don't know that Mario Tennis is like a big system mover. I think Pokopia in March could actually be something that might drive Switch 2 back to the top of the charts. But again, Nintendo's got to get more games announced, more things shown for past next month, because right now it's pretty slim pickings, at least for things that have confirmed release dates for Nintendo Switch 2. All right, now we get into the Zelda portion of the video, folks. Man, why are we talking about a Zelda remake possibly coming out this year? Although there's no guarantee, and the rumor doesn't even state this year, but it's going to make some sense in a moment. We're talking about a friend of mine, somebody who I've at least had some conversations privately with in the past about leaks and stuff like this, and stuff that they knew and stuff that I might have known. We were cross-referencing some of our source information. Nintendo Deal. So Nintendo Deal, earlier in January, when he puts things out there, he just does like these very simple leaks. He just like straight up says a thing, and that's it, with no context, doesn't respond to anyone really. But this is what I find interesting for two different reasons. So first off, he says the word Xenoblade, and then you see the emoji eyes. Okay, he said this back on January 6th. What's really interesting about that is, well, obviously he must have known about Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which we know just got announced yesterday. It was like a big shadow drop. We have a physical version for Switch 2 coming out in the month of April, on April 16th. But this game's already out now, $5 to upgrade. You can buy the Switch 1 version, I think, at a lot of places for $40 right now. So yeah, he obviously knew about this. That's why he tweeted out Xenoblade earlier, and then obviously did this whole thing. And well, this isn't the first time he did this. Back in December, on December 8th, he said a Zelda remake. Again, not responding to anybody. Very similar to that Xenoblade leak. We can now call it a leak in hindsight that he did. This is still a rumor because it hasn't happened yet. What's really, really interesting is if we go back to that eyeball emoji, Nintendo did actually respond to somebody on the eyeball emoji about the Zelda remake. He responded to another friend of the channel, Sumbro Nation, who said a Zelda remake, and he said, all in good time. If you think he's pussyfooting around, folks, he literally is meaning when he said Zelda remake back in December, he meant it's coming. There's a Zelda remake coming, all in good time. Likely, if I had to guess, for Zelda's 40th anniversary, or at least announced with Zelda's 40th anniversary. Again, though, just a rumor. And Nintendo does have a history of doing this. He doesn't have a bunch of leaks out there, but from the ones I have seen, there's still one pending besides the Zelda one. He talked about how there'll be like different size carts, and it's going to take some time for Nintendo to get them together, but it is something that's happening. And then obviously, after he said that, we immediately got this report. I believe it was from Micron or whatever. Some company had a report out there basically detailing exactly that Nintendo is working on this stuff. So you can argue that's a confirmation, but again, until they actually start using different size cartridges, that doesn't mean anything on Switch 2 yet. So that one's still a pending one he has out there. And he's got the Zelda Remake one pending, but he had a few other ones for Switch 2 last year that did come true. So at this point, he has 2 pending, and then he's at like 3 or 4 that he's gotten right. Basically 100% track record because he barely puts anything out there. And again, I've talked to him about one of the things he put out there last year, privately, and that thing did happen. It had to do with price points and some stuff. So anyways, the point is that Nintendo does seem to be decently reliable and not someone who bullshits. Obviously, you can tell by his username, he's got a massive following over on X because he posts kind of like stuff like Wario64 does. You ever heard of him? He'll put up links to like buy things and deals and sales and all this stuff. So very similar to Wario64, but he does obviously sometimes add a little bit of commentary in, and he's not quite as quick on the trigger as Wario64 because I think this is like an actual human based on me talking to him, and because of that, he's doing this all himself. At this point, to me, it's very clear that the Wario64 account either has a team of people or some sort of AI or bots that are doing things. There is a human behind the channel. We know because it helped with Jake Randall with some stuff back in the day, but so there's a real human behind Wario64, but I think how that channel is able to get things up so quickly, there's no way it's one person doing that. So pretty interesting stuff, and I gotta say I am just thrilled about this Zelda remake possibility. So then the question is, if a Zelda remake is coming, and let's say it either comes out this year or is at least announced with the 40th anniversary stuff, which I want to be honest, I don't expect them to say anything until June or September about the 40th anniversary and show the Zelda movie and all that. What could that remake be? Well, we gotta get the obvious statement out of the way. We talked about this for a while. There is the Ocarina of Time remake, and set aside all of the rumors about it because maybe you don't trust a certain person that's been putting the rumors out about it. We don't need the rumors to know that something's probably happening with Ocarina of Time because Aonuma himself has already teased it in multiple interviews, been asked directly about it, laughed about it, said let's move on, stuff like this. So I find it really interesting because this is exactly how he teased other things in the past, Link's Awakening remake and Echoes of Wisdom, a playable Zelda game, like you play as Zelda in a game. So he's done multiple teases like this and admitted publicly in an interview that he does tease future like remakes and remasters and future games via these interviews. So Aonuma's just straight up said that he does this stuff. So you can't just blatantly ignore it when Aonuma has said, oh, no, I actually do tease projects in this way. So that's the biggest evidence we have that an Ocarina of Time remake is coming. Does that mean that Ocarina of Time remake is this year or for the 40th anniversary? That we can't know. And the reason I say this year or 40th anniversary is because it is possible it gets announced this year, but releases more towards when the movie comes out, because the movie comes out in May of next year. Got a feeling the anniversary is probably going to run through May. So it is possible that it comes out next year. It also is possible that it comes out this year. It's also possible that that's not the Zelda remake he's talking about. But we have had another Zelda remake not too far back on Switch. We literally had Link's Awakening get a remake. So it is possible that the next remake is now another Grezzo remake following up Echoes of Wisdom, which was a brand new game. Maybe they go remake, brand new game, remake, brand new game. I have no idea. But that could put them up to remake something like A Link Between Worlds, or maybe remake The Oracle games, that would be really fascinating if the Oracle games got remade. Maybe Minish Cap gets revisited. Maybe they go all the way back and remake the original Legend of Zelda. Look, there's so many possibilities when you talk about Grezzo and probably remaking a top-down game. I don't really think there's any other major 3D game that would be remade at this point. We obviously had HD versions of The Wind Waker and Twilight Princess back on Wii U, which I know a lot of us want to come back, but just haven't come back, so it sucks they're stuck on Wii U. But we did get Skyward Sword HD on Nintendo Switch. I think there could be a Switch 2 edition update for that sometime to add 4K support, but that's not a remake, right? That's just a Switch 2 edition. So this just opens that possibility to probably, if there is a 3D remake, going back to the very first 3D game, which technically has had a remaster, not a remake. I want to know it's not a remake, but it was remastered for the Ocarina of Time 3D release. It would be really nice to see them go back to Ocarina of Time and start working their way forward with remakes, going Ocarina of Time, then Majora's Mask, then Wind Waker, then Twilight Princess, then maybe Skyward Sword again. And now we're to the Breath of the Wild days. And by the time we get to that, we're probably on Switch 4 or Switch 5 at that point. And, you know, at that point, yeah, it would probably be appropriate, because we'll now be like 10, 15, 20 years from now, to bring back Breath of the Wild in some major way. So, yeah, I do think that this is all possible. And when we talk about the realistic things, either a top-down game or Ocarina of Time remake has to be, in my estimation, what he is talking about. Of course, the question is, if this is true, what game do you think it is? Or, you know, there's also the possibility you don't think it's true. Obviously, you know, we try to slowly whittle out the bad faith actors. Just having conversed with Nintendo behind the scenes, and no, he hasn't told me anything about this. He's never really led us astray, and he's very transparent, and he does hate the idea of fake information getting out there, which is why he doesn't really put things out there unless he actually knows, which is why his track record so far has been 100% besides the 2 currently pending rumors. And so I like that approach. Of course, Tat the Backlog seems to have a very similar approach. I'm not really going to say anything until it's just about to happen, or till I'm like definitive that this thing exists. I like that notion. Nate the Hate's actually gotten better about that as well over the years. But yeah, we'll have to just wait and see what happens. Obviously, we already have reason to believe a remake could happen because they did one on the last console, likely to do more in the future. And it is Zelda's 40th anniversary this year. Technically, tomorrow is Zelda's 40th. But, well, I'm not wearing my Zelda hat today. And I know some of you guys asked me where I got this from. I actually got this from Hot Topic. I got this about 4 years ago there, right after COVID. And I can't find it in stock anymore. You might be able to find it on Amazon or somewhere else. I don't know, guys. You let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. I am Nathaniel RoboJams from Nintendo Prime, and I'll catch you in the next video. And, well, whatever. Bye, everyone.